Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place where we take a whole stack of interesting information, sometimes complex stuff, and really try to pull out the key nuggets of knowledge for you.
Yeah.
Things that help you navigate the world and maybe even, navigate the landscape inside your own head.
That's right.
So have you ever been in that situation? It's almost universal, I think. You've spent hours, maybe days, poring over notes,
Mhm.
right? Highlighting textbooks till they're practically glowing.
Mm-hmm. Neon pages.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe you've even rewritten whole sections. You've put the time in, you've definitely put the effort in, and then that moment comes when you try to actually recall what you learned, and your mind just goes blank.
Mhm.
Utterly, infuriatingly blank.
Oh, it's such a critical point. That feeling, that sensation of just wasted effort, the sheer exasperation when you've put so much in, but it feels like you've gotten so little out.
Exactly.
It's a disconnect, a really profound one that so many of us feel. And well, it's more than just annoying, isn't it? It can be deeply discouraging.
Yeah, discouraging is the word.
And that feeling, it can lead straight into things like procrastination, like why bother starting if it won't stick? Or it's just a general sense of dread when you have to learn something new.
Right.
And maybe even worst case, this deep-seated feeling of failure, like I'm just not good at learning, which is the total opposite of what learning should actually feel like.
Absolutely. And that disconnect, that profound inefficiency you mentioned, that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. Our mission, really, in this deep dive is to give you the insights, but also the science-backed tools to move past that frustrating illusion of learning. So you can unlock your actual potential.
Yeah.
Turn that frustration around into, well, a sense of empowerment, feeling effective. We've been looking at some really compelling work on this, stuff that challenges how we normally think about studying.
Yeah, it really does.
So let's start right there. Let's dissect this core misunderstanding, the difference between just studying and actually truly learning.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how common this pointless feeling problem is. Like you said, we all start out with the best intentions. You can picture it, right? Let's say Sarah, a student. Coffee's ready, desk is clear, textbook open.
The ritual.
The ritual, exactly. She reads, she highlights, maybe she makes these super detailed notes, rewriting things. She's convinced, that just putting in the hours, doing the activity of studying will automatically mean she's learning.
She's following the playbook we were all kind of given.
Right, she is. She's committing to the process.
But then comes that reality check.
Yeah.
Sarah gets to the end of the chapter, closes the book, maybe takes a breath, and tries to remember the main points. And it's like static, a blank screen in her head.
Yeah, mental brick wall.
Totally. And it's not just annoying, like you said, it's infuriating. It makes the whole last few hours feel completely pointless, like she was just spinning her wheels.
Getting nowhere. All that investment for what feels like zero return.
Right. Zero.
And that's exactly the frustrating cycle so many people get trapped in. We pour time, we pour energy into studying, but the results, the actual retained knowledge, it feels minimal. It really is like trying to fill a bucket that's got a big hole in the bottom.
That's a great analogy.
You keep pouring water and effort, time, but it just drains right out. And that cycle, doing that over and over, it leads directly to procrastination. Why start the next chapter if the last one felt useless?
Makes sense. Avoid the pain.
Exactly. And it fosters that deep sense of failure. Maybe learning isn't for me. But the key thing, the really crucial insight we'll explore, is that the problem usually isn't the person, it's the methods they're using.
Okay, so that's the real kicker then. This illusion versus reality idea. The source material we looked at makes such a strong case that the core issue isn't usually a lack of effort. Sarah was trying.
Right. She was putting in the hours.
The problem is confusing the act of studying, which is often passive, like just reading with actual learning, which has to be active. We're doing one thing, maybe diligently, but expecting the result of the other.
Precisely. It's like thinking that just sitting in the driver's seat means you're actually driving the car and going somewhere. You're there, but you're not engaging the engine.
Good one. So how does the brain play into this? Why does it let us get away with this illusion?
Well, our brains are amazing, incredibly efficient machines, but they're also, you could say, quite discerning. Picky, even.
Picky? How so?
Think of your brain less like a sponge just soaking everything up and more like a very selective bouncer at an exclusive club.
Okay, I like that.
It tends to filter out information that isn't engaging or doesn't require effort or doesn't seem immediately useful. It's almost like it's asking itself, why should I bother storing this? Is this really important for survival or, for later use?
So just reading or highlighting doesn't pass the bouncer's test.
Often no. It's too passive. It doesn't send a strong enough signal that this information matters, that it needs to be encoded deeply for long-term retention. The brain needs to do something with the information, to wrestle with it, to connect it, for it to really stick. It needs that effort.
And without that effort, we get stuck in that loop we mentioned. You study hard, or at least you spend a lot of time, you remember very little, you feel discouraged, and then you dread the next study session. It turns learning, which should be exciting, maybe even fun sometimes, into this tedious chore, a source of anxiety, a test you feel like you're always failing.
It becomes a really vicious cycle. But here's a critical insight, maybe the most empowering one from all this. The problem isn't you.
Say it again.
The problem isn't you. It's not your intelligence. It's not your fundamental ability to learn. The problem almost always lies with the methods you've been taught or, just fallen into using.
Wow. Okay.
Many common study habits, things like rereading, maybe mindless highlighting, they only create a very convincing illusion of learning. They make you feel productive, but they don't deliver real, deep understanding.
So recognizing that,
Yep.
that's the first step.
Absolutely. Truly accepting that it's a technique issue, not a personal failing, is indispensable. It's the key that unlocks the door to breaking free from that frustrating cycle. It's incredibly liberating to realize, oh, I'm not broken, I just need better tools.
What a release that must be for people listening. It's not me, it's my tools. Okay, so let's break down some of these ineffective habits, these illusions of learning. First one, the big one, rereading. We've all done it. Probably the most common strategy out there.
Oh, absolutely. Number one on the hit parade of ineffective strategies, probably. And it feels so productive, doesn't it?
It does.
You're going over the material again. It starts to feel comfortable, familiar. You recognize the words, the sentences, maybe even whole paragraphs. And your brain thinks, oh, I know this.
But that familiarity is the trap, right? It's deceptive.
Hugely deceptive. It just makes the material familiar, not actually understood in a way you can recall or use later. You recognize it when you see it again, like seeing someone's face you've seen before.
Right, but you can't remember their name or how you know them.
Exactly. You can recognize the words on the page, but you haven't truly grasped the underlying concepts. You can't explain it in your own words. You can't connect it to other ideas.
It's just recognition, not recall.
Precisely. And the reason it's so popular is because it's easy. It requires very little mental effort compared to other methods.
Path of least resistance.
Exactly. Which is usually the path of least learning, ironically. It doesn't challenge your brain enough to force it to build those strong, durable memory traces. It's just passive re-exposure.
Okay, so rereading is out, or at least not effective on its own. What about highlighting? That feels active. You're engaging, you're marking things.
Highlighting. The siren song of the fluorescent marker.
Yeah.
It feels good, it's satisfying. You run that marker over the text, and it feels like you're actively doing something, picking out the important bits, making your mark, literally.
It's like progress.
It does. But all too often, it becomes a remarkably mindless activity. Have you ever looked back at a page you highlighted and realized almost everything is yellow?
Guilty? Absolutely. Or pink or blue.
Right. We highlight way too much, defeating the purpose of identifying key information. Or, maybe worse, we highlight without really pausing to think, okay, why is this sentence important? What's the core idea here?
So it's just a physical action, not a mental one.
Often, yes. It becomes a passive gesture. You're coloring, essentially, not necessarily comprehending or evaluating. It's not an active process of making meaning. It can even give you a false sense that you've captured the idea, so you don't need to think about it further.
Okay, highlighting gets a downgrade too. What about note-taking? Surely taking notes is good.
Well, how you take notes matters immensely. Let's talk about passive note-taking. This is where you're basically copying text word for word, maybe from the textbook, or trying to transcribe every single word the lecturer says.
Right, trying to get it all down, verbatim.
Your notebook might fill up pages and pages of notes. It looks impressive. It feels like hard work.
It is hard work, physically.
It is. But in terms of building real understanding, it often falls short. It's essentially transcription, not transformation. You're acting like a human photocopier.
Yep.
You're not engaging the critical thinking, the synthesis, the process of connecting new ideas to what you already know. Your hand is busy, sure, but your brain might not be truly wrestling with material, putting it into your own mental framework.
So the goal isn't just to have notes, but to have notes that reflect your understanding.
Precisely. The goal of note-taking should be to make the ideas your own, to rephrase, to summarize, to question, not just to duplicate someone else's words.
This brings us back to that core principle you mentioned. These common methods, rereading, highlighting passively, copying notes, they're easy. They feel comfortable. Like steady comfort food.
That's a perfect description. Comfort food, it gives you that fleeting feeling of satisfaction, maybe makes you feel like you've done something, tick the box for studying.
But it doesn't actually nourish your brain, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't build that long-term intellectual muscle.
Exactly. Real learning, the kind that sticks, the kind you can use, it's inherently effortful. It has to be. It demands that you actively wrestle with the ideas.
Wrestle.
Yeah, grapple with them, connect them to other things you know, challenge them, ask questions, actively build a mental model, a framework in your mind. It's like building muscle in the gym. You need resistance, you need effort to get stronger.
No pain, no gain for the brain.
Sort of, yeah. Passive techniques might feel easy, but they just don't deliver lasting results because they don't push your brain to create those strong neural pathways. It's when your brain is actively struggling, retrieving information, making connections, that's when the real learning happens.
Which leads us kind of grimly to the hidden costs of using these poor strategies. It's not just about wasted time, is it? It feels like it takes a bigger toll.
It absolutely does. It goes way beyond just lost hours, although that alone is a huge cost.
Right.
Think about it. Ineffective studying significantly drains your mental and emotional energy. Remember Sarah rereading her textbook for hours. She finishes, and she's likely exhausted, mentally fatigued, but not necessarily any more knowledgeable in a usable way. It chips away at your motivation, your focus for other things.
It's like running on a treadmill that's not plugged in. You get tired, but you haven't actually gone anywhere.
Perfect analogy. All that effort, but no forward progress. And think about the opportunity cost.
Yeah. What else could you have been doing?
Exactly. Every hour you spend passively rereading, just letting your eyes skim the page without real engagement, is an hour you didn't spend with friends or pursuing a hobby or just relaxing.
Or maybe even more importantly, an hour you didn't spend using effective learning techniques that would actually give you a return on that time.
That's the real double whammy. You lose the time and you don't get the learning outcome you wanted. It's incredibly inefficient.
And over time, this chronic inefficiency, what does it lead to?
It directly leads to increased stress, definitely, burnout, feeling overwhelmed. And sadly, it often creates this really pervasive negative view of learning itself. It stops being a discovery and starts feeling like a punishment.
Which then must mess with how you see yourself, right? Your self-perception.
Profoundly.
Yeah.
If you consistently put in effort, or what feels like effort, and you don't see results, what conclusion are you likely to draw?
That I'm just not smart enough.
Yeah.
We're not good at this subject.
Exactly. You start doubting your own abilities. Maybe I'm just not a math person, or history just doesn't click for me. You internalize the failure of the method as a personal failure.
And that's heartbreaking because it's based on a false premise.
It is. And this self-defeating mindset, it severely limits your potential for growth. It erodes your confidence. You might avoid challenging subjects or opportunities in the future because you've built up these limiting beliefs about your own capacity.
Which is the opposite of what learning should do. Learning should open doors, expand your world.
It should be empowering, joyful even, a source of discovery, not self-criticism or anxiety. It should make your world bigger, not smaller.
Okay. And there's another cost mentioned, the tragedy of shallow knowledge. What does that mean beyond just, forgetting things?
It's a really poignant phrase. Passive learning techniques tend to produce knowledge that's superficial. It's shallow. You might recognize a term on a multiple choice test.
Right, enough to pass, maybe.
Maybe. But it fades quickly because it wasn't deeply encoded. It's not connected robustly to other knowledge in your brain. The real tragedy, though, isn't just forgetting facts. It's missing out on the deep satisfaction that comes with genuine understanding.
Those aha moments.
Yeah, exactly. Those moments when a complex idea finally clicks into place, when you see how different pieces fit together, when you can suddenly explain it to someone else or apply it to solve a new problem. That's the real reward of learning.
And poor methods rob you of that.
They can, yeah. They rob you of the inherent joy, the deep fulfillment that comes from truly mastering something. You're missing out on building that rich, interconnected web of knowledge that actually serves you in life, long after the test is over. It's like only ever tasting instant coffee when gourmet espresso exists.
Okay, so we're stuck in this cycle, using butter knives to chop trees, draining our energy, feeling bad about ourselves, and only getting shallow knowledge. What's the way out? It sounds like it starts with a mindset shift.
It absolutely has to start there. Embracing active engagement begins with how you think about the struggle. And one of the most powerful reframes from the work we looked at is this: Struggling to learn is not a sign of low intelligence.
Okay. What is it then?
It's a signal, a clear signal that you just need better tools. Your brain is telling you, hey, the way you're feeding me this information isn't working. Give me something I can actually work with.
That is incredibly liberating. It takes the judgment off yourself.
Completely. Think about that analogy you mentioned earlier, trying to chop down a sturdy tree with a butter knife.
Right. Impossible.
The problem isn't your strength or your effort or your determination. The problem is the tool. It's completely inadequate for the job. Rereading, passive highlighting, those are the butter knives of studying.
Okay, I get it. They're not designed for deep learning.
Exactly. You could hack away all day with that butter knife and make barely a scratch. But the empowering news, the really good news, is that cognitive science has given us much, much better tools. Power tools, even?
Like chainsaws.
Metaphorically, yes. Methods that work with your brain's natural learning processes, leveraging principles like neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change and adapt. These better strategies, they do require more effort up front, no doubt about it.
Like starting a chainsaw takes a bit more effort than picking up a butter knife.
Good one, yes.
Yeah.
But they consistently deliver real, lasting results. You trade that butter knife for a tool that actually works. And once you get skilled with it, you'll be amazed at how effectively you can chop down that learning challenge.
So this leads to what you call the transformative upgrade mindset.
That's right. Shifting your internal story from, I'm not smart enough, or I can't learn this, to, I just need better strategies, or I need to upgrade my learning toolkit. That shift is utterly transformative.
How so? What changes?
It immediately puts you back in the driver's seat. You're in control. You're no longer a victim of your perceived limitations. You're the architect of your own learning journey. Challenges become puzzles to solve with the right strategy, not proof of your inadequacy.
So you become more of an active participant, an experimenter.
Exactly. A thoughtful experimenter, trying different techniques, seeing what works best for you for this specific material. It's a critical turning point, realizing you're not broken, you're just ready for an upgrade that's powerful.
And the frustration we felt before.
That frustration was actually a valuable signal. It wasn't telling you to give up. It was telling you it was time for a change in approach. It was a signpost pointing towards finding better methods.
So embrace these new methods. Take charge. You're the architect, not the victim. I like that.
It's a fundamental shift in agency.
And at the heart of all these better methods, this new mindset, is this idea of active engagement. Can you define that more clearly for us? What does it really mean in practice?
Active engagement is the absolute core principle. It's the secret sauce, if you will. It means moving beyond just passively receiving information.
Like being a spectator.
Exactly. Instead, you actively interact with it. You question it. You summarize it in your own words. You try to connect it to things you already know. You apply it to new situations or problems. You become a participant fully involved in the process.
You mentioned the bike riding analogy earlier, which I thought was great.
Yeah, it illustrates it perfectly. You don't learn to ride a bike by watching YouTube videos about cycling physics or by reading the bike's manual.
No matter how detailed it is.
Right. You learn by doing. By getting on the bike, trying to balance, maybe falling off, adjusting, trying again. You are physically and mentally engaged in the process. The same applies to learning complex ideas. Your brain needs to get on the bike.
And that effort, even the falling off part, is crucial.
Absolutely crucial. Active, effortful engagement is precisely what builds strong, durable memory traces. When you genuinely struggle, when you have to really work to recall a definition or explain a concept or solve a problem, that's when your brain is firing on all cylinders.
It's strengthening those connections.
It really is. And paradoxically, that feeling of struggle, that mental effort, is a good sign. It means your brain is working hard to encode the information deeply. It's like blazing that trail in the woods. The harder the effort to clear the path initially, the clearer the path becomes over time.
So active engagement isn't just one single technique. It's more of a mindset, a way of approaching learning.
It's definitely a mindset shift, first and foremost. It moves you from being a passive consumer, just taking information in, to being an active creator of knowledge and understanding within your own mind.
Building your own mental structures.
Precisely. And luckily, there are practical strategies that embody this active engagement principle. The source material highlights 4 key ones that can really help wake up your brain for true learning.
Okay, let's get practical. Give us the tools. Strategy 1. Chunking. Sounds intriguing, like breaking things down.
Exactly. Chunking is all about grouping information into smaller, meaningful, manageable units. Think about how you remember a phone number. You don't usually remember it as 10 separate digits.
Yeah, you remember it like area code, then 3 digits, then 4 digits.
Precisely. You chunk it into 3 meaningful groups. Our working memory, that sort of mental whiteboard where we hold information temporarily, is surprisingly limited. It can only hold maybe 4 to 7 items at once for most people.
Only 4 to 7, that's not much.
It's not. But chunking is like a clever loophole. By grouping related items into a single chunk, that chunk only takes up one slot in your working memory, even if it contains multiple pieces of information. This lets you handle more complex information without getting overloaded.
So it helps organize the information better.
Yes, it helps you organize your mental landscape. Instead of juggling lots of separate, disconnected facts, you create these larger, interconnected mental chunks that are much easier to hold on to, recall, and understand the relationships between.
You gave the FBI example earlier. FBI versus FBI.
Right. 3 letters versus one meaningful acronym. Much easier to remember FBI as one unit because it's linked to a concept you already know. In reading, chunking means training yourself to see and process meaningful phrases or idea units, not just individual words one by one.
So instead of reading like, the quick brown fox,
Oh,
you read like, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog.
exactly. You're grabbing meaningful clusters of words. This dramatically speeds up reading, but more importantly, it boosts comprehension because you're processing ideas, not just decoding letters and words. You become an idea hunter, like you said.
Seeing the bigger picture.
Yes, seeing the forest, not just counting the trees.
Okay, how do you practice this? It sounds like it takes conscious effort.
It does initially. You can actively practice reading and phrases. Maybe take a pencil and lightly mark slash points in a paragraph to group words into meaningful phrases. Then practice letting your eyes jump from one phrase chunk to the next.
Don't worry about speed at first.
No, focus purely on grasping the meaning of each phrase. Speed will come naturally with practice. The goal is to train your eyes and brain to look for and process these larger conceptual units automatically. You'll absorb info faster and understand it more deeply.
It makes sense. Train your brain to grab bigger bites.
Okay.
Strategy 2, finger tracking. This sounds almost childish, like something from primary school. Does it really work for adults learning complex things?
It sounds basic, I know, but it's surprisingly powerful and yes, absolutely effective for adults. It's simply using your finger or maybe a pen or stylus to physically guide your eyes across the text as you read, whether on page or a screen.
We often tell kids not to do that eventually.
We do, and I think that's often a mistake. We throw out a really useful tool. The reason it works is because it anchors your attention.
How does a finger anchor attention?
It gives your eyes a clear, moving focal point. Our eyes naturally dart around these little jumps are called saccades. They also tend to jump back unintentionally to reread words or lines. That's regression. Using your finger provides a smooth, consistent pacer.
So it stops your eyes from wandering or skipping back?
Exactly. It makes the reading process more deliberate, more focused. It reduces those unconscious regressions and keeps your eyes moving forward steadily. It also provides a kind of subtle physical feedback, keeping you more engaged.
So it basically streamlines the physical act of reading, making it smoother and more focused.
Precisely. You're not just passively letting your eyes drift, you're actively guiding your visual intake. This reduces the mental effort needed just to keep your place, freeing up more brain power for actually understanding the content. It improves focus and can help with retention because you're less likely to skip over important bits.
Simple, but makes sense. Give your eyes a leader to follow. Okay, strategy 3. Reducing subvocalization. This is the inner voice, right? Reading the words silently in your head.
That's the one. That little voice narrating the text as you go, it feels completely natural, almost essential for understanding, especially since it's often how we learn to read initially.
You're saying it's a problem.
It becomes a bottleneck. While it feels helpful, subvocalization limits your reading speed to your speaking speed, which is usually somewhere around, say, 200 to 300 words per minute for most people.
Okay. And our brains can process faster.
Much faster. Your brain can process visual information far more rapidly than you can speak. So that inner voice, while comforting, is actually holding you back. It can also sometimes interfere with grasping the overall meaning because you're stuck at the word-by-word level.
Like listening to music too slowly, you miss the melody.
Great analogy, yes. You want to train your brain to grasp meaning more directly from the visual input, bypassing the slower verbal translation step.
Okay, how on earth do you quiet that inner voice? It seems automatic.
It takes practice, definitely. One way, if you're using finger tracking, is to deliberately move your finger slightly faster than your inner voice can keep up. Gently push your pace.
Outrun the voice.
Kind of. Another technique is to actively occupy that inner voice. Try humming quietly or counting silently in your head, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, while you read. This uses the same neural pathways as subvocalization, effectively distracting it.
Chew gum, maybe?
That can work too, yeah. Anything that gently occupies the mechanisms of inner speech. The goal isn't to stop understanding, quite the opposite. It's to shift towards faster, more direct visual comprehension. Become a more efficient reader by letting your eyes lead, not your inner mouth.
Fascinating. Okay, now for the big one. Strategy 4, active recall. You called this the most powerful learning tool. That's a bold claim.
It is bold, but the research strongly supports it. Cognitive scientists often call it retrieval practice or the testing effect, and it consistently shows huge benefits for long-term retention. Active recall simply means retrieving information from memory without looking at your notes or the text.
So not rereading, but actually pulling it out of your brain.
Exactly. Forcing your brain to do the work of retrieval.
Okay, walk me through it. How do I do this? After I read something.
Right. After you read a section or watch a lecture segment or study a concept, close the book. Put away the notes. Turn off the video. Then, try to summarize the key ideas entirely from memory.
Just think about it.
You can, but it's often more effective to externalize it somehow. Speak it out loud as if you were explaining it to someone who knows nothing about it.
Teach it to the cat.
Teach it to the cat. Perfect. Or write down a summary in a separate notebook. Draw a concept map. The key is no peeking at the source material while you're trying to recall. That initial effortful struggle is where the magic happens.
Why is that struggle so important? It feels counterintuitive. We usually try to avoid struggling.
Because that struggle, that effort to retrieve, is what strengthens the memory trace. Every time you successfully pull a piece of information out of your memory banks, you're not just accessing it, you're reinforcing the neural pathway to that information, making it stronger and easier to access next time.
Like clearing that path in the woods again.
Exactly like that. The more you walk it, the clearer it gets. And maybe just as importantly, active recall instantly shows you what you don't know.
It reveals the gaps.
Precisely. When you try to recall and draw a blank on a specific point, that's incredibly valuable feedback. You now know exactly where you need to go back and review or relearn. It makes your subsequent study incredibly targeted and efficient.
So the effort versus reward. Rereading feels easy, low effort, but gives low reward in terms of memory. Active recall feels hard, high effort, but gives high reward.
That's the trade-off, perfectly stated. Rereading creates familiarity, the illusion of knowing. Active recall creates actual competence, the ability to retrieve and use the knowledge. It forces your brain to work, and that work is what builds lasting memory.
So we should embrace that feeling of difficulty when trying to recall.
Yes, embrace the struggle, that moment of hesitation racking your brain. That's not failure, that's learning in progress. That's your brain building stronger connections. When you identify a gap, don't get discouraged. Get curious. Go back, fill that specific gap with focused review, then try recalling again later.
It really shifts you from being passive, just receiving info, to being active, like testing yourself and creating understanding.
It absolutely does. You become the active agent in building your knowledge. And remember that saying, often attributed to Einstein or Feynman.
Which one?
If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Active recall is the practice ground for that. Can you explain this concept clearly in your own words without looking? That's the ultimate test.
So make active recall a regular habit.
Absolutely. It's probably the single most effective change you can make to how you study, ensuring what you learn today actually sticks with you for the long haul and becomes usable knowledge. It's the cornerstone of building real mastery.
Wow. Okay, that was a lot, but incredibly useful. We've really covered some ground today in this deep dive. We started by looking at that frustrating illusion of learning, why just putting in time with common habits like rereading often doesn't work.
Right, understanding the problem first.
Then we talked about that crucial mindset shift, moving towards active engagement, realizing learning needs effort, like building muscle. It's about the tools, not just your innate ability.
Seeing yourself as capable of upgrading your methods.
Exactly. And then we got practical with 4 powerful strategies. Chunking information using finger tracking for focus, reducing that inner voice with subvocalization techniques, and the big one, the real game changer, active recall.
It's a fantastic toolkit, really, and it represents a fundamentally different, more effective way to approach learning and intellectual growth.
So for listeners wanting to put this into action, what are the next steps? It feels like a lot to change all at once.
That's a great point. You absolutely don't need to overhaul everything overnight. That would be overwhelming. The key is consistent experimentation, starting small.
Just pick one thing.
Yeah, I'd really encourage you, pick just one technique we talked about today. Maybe it's active recall, maybe it's finger tracking, and commit to trying just that one thing this week. Maybe for just 10 or 15 minutes during your next study or reading session.
So maybe try using figure tracking for one chapter, or commit to doing a 2-minute verbal summary after reading a few pages.
Exactly. Small, manageable experiments. And then pay attention. How did it feel? Did you notice a difference in your focus? In what you remembered later? The goal isn't immediate mastery, it's discovery, finding what works for you.
And be patient with it, I guess. It might feel awkward at first.
Definitely be patient. New skills always feel awkward. Think about learning to type or play an instrument. It's clumsy initially, but with consistent practice, even just a little bit regularly, these powerful methods will start to feel natural. They'll become second nature, just part of how you learn effectively.
So this is really more than just study hacks. It sounds like an invitation to build a completely new relationship with learning itself.
It truly is a more empowering, more effective, and honestly often more enjoyable relationship. You have the tools now, the insights, to take real dynamic control of your own intellectual growth, to move past that old frustration.
So maybe a final provocative thought for everyone listening.
Okay, consider this. What if that frustration you used to feel with pointless studying, that feeling of hitting a wall, what if that wasn't a stop sign? What if it was actually a crucial signal from your brain?
A signal for what?
A signal guiding you toward this exact moment. A realization that you are ready for an upgrade. Ready to move beyond the passive, often ineffective methods you might have been using. Ready for something better.
So the frustration was actually helpful.
Potentially, yes. It indicated a mismatch between your effort and your tools. So the question now is, what new possibilities open up for you in your studies, your career, your personal interests when you stop fighting against information, trying to force it in passively, and instead start collaborating with your brain? When you embrace learning as this active, effortful, but ultimately incredibly rewarding journey of discovery? That's a powerful question. Start collaborating with your brain. Begin today. Pick one small thing. Experiment. You might be genuinely surprised by what you uncover and maybe even rediscover some of the joy in learning along the way.